There are moments in life when a desire hits you so strongly that it almost feels like a memory instead of a dream, like something you're remembering rather than something you're wishing for. And if you've ever wondered why that happens, this might be the most important message you hear today. Because according to Neville Goddard, that desire you feel isn't a sign of distance. It's the first proof that the thing you want is already yours. Most people spend their lives thinking desire means lack, that wanting something is evidence they don't have it. But what if the opposite is true? What if the desire is actually the signal that the fulfillment already exists in your inner world? What if the very thing you're longing for is calling you because, in imagination, the only place where creation actually happens, you already possess it? This is the paradox Neville taught. You don't desire what's outside of you. You desire what already belongs to you in the unseen. And the moment you understand this, your entire relationship with manifestation changes. No more chasing, no more waiting, no more begging life for permission. Instead, you step into the version of yourself who already has what you want, and let the world rearrange itself around that truth. So before you dismiss your desires as fantasies or someday goals, stay with me. What you're about to hear may flip the way you see your future and help you finally understand why the desire chose you in the first place. The wise mentor begins by saying that desire never arrives as a sign of lack, but as proof of something already alive within. It's like an inner echo reminding the person that the desire is already yours, Neville Goddard, long before any physical confirmation appears. When the wanting arises, it carries a strange familiarity, almost like remembering something rather than discovering it. That's the quiet magic of the law of assumption. It reveals what the deeper self has already claimed. He explains that most people were raised to believe desire equals distance, as if wanting meant not having. But in Neville's teachings, desire is evidence of proximity, not separation. It's the internal spark that appears precisely because creation is finished, Neville. The mentor compares it to smelling bread before it leaves the oven. The experience reaches you first in imagination, and since imagination creates reality, that first experience is already the beginning of manifestation. He adds that desire behaves like a friend who shows up without warning, just to remind you of who you really are. It doesn't come from outside. It rises from within, from the very place where all states exist. That's why the wish-fulfilled method works so deeply. You're not creating something new. You're aligning with something already present. The moment the desire appears, the state is born, quietly, naturally, effortlessly. He smiles, while explaining that people often doubt their desires because they compare them with their current circumstances. But circumstances are simply reflections of an older inner state, nothing more. The desire points to a newer version of you, already alive in imagination. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard isn't about forcing anything. It's about recognizing that the seed has already sprouted in the unseen. The physical world is just slow to catch up. Sometimes he shares the analogy of hearing a song in your mind before it plays on the radio. You don't panic when it hasn't started yet. You just know it's coming. Desire works the same way. When it appears, it's not a prediction, it's a revelation. It's the inner confirmation that the state has been selected. To assume the end, Neville, is simply to trust this inner signal more than the outer noise. He mentions how often people ignore this inner signal because they think desire is random. But nothing in consciousness is random. The law of assumption manifestation is precise, intentional, and deeply personal. Desire is the compass pointing toward the version of yourself you're meant to embody. And once that compass moves, something inside you already knows the direction is set. That's why Neville says creation is finished. The destination exists before the journey begins. He tells a small personal story of when he once felt an intense desire to change his life financially. At the time, nothing suggested improvement, but the desire kept resurfacing like a quiet reminder. Only later did he understand that the desire wasn't asking him to pursue a dream. It was revealing the state he had already stepped into unconsciously. That realization changed everything. It taught him that live in the end isn't wishful thinking, it's remembering. He emphasizes that countless people miss their manifestations because they misinterpret this first moment. They treat desire as a problem instead of a message. But if they knew that feeling is the secret, they'd see desire as the first spark of fulfillment, not the first sign of lack. The mentor often says that nothing inside you stirs without purpose. If it stirred, it already exists for you somewhere in consciousness. He explains that when a desire feels persistent, warm and strangely familiar, that's the deeper self saying, "This is already yours." It's not about effort, it's about awareness. The physical world is simply the slowest layer of reality. Imagination, however, is immediate. That's why Neville Goddard always insisted that everything begins and ends within. The desire appearing is the ending appearing first. And so, he invites the listener to sit with desire differently, not as a chase but as recognition, to feel into the quiet truth beneath it, that the state already exists, waiting for them to step into it. If they can understand this, the next step becomes almost inevitable, which leads directly into the next topic. Desire, he says, is never accidental. It doesn't show up randomly on a quiet afternoon or appear out of nowhere during a moment of frustration. It is intentional, purposeful, and deeply personal. Neville Goddard always insisted that desire is a gift from God, not a temptation, not a distraction, but a revelation. It shows you, with surprising clarity, the version of yourself who is already living the fulfillment. When this understanding sinks in, the person begins to treat desire not as longing, but as guidance. He explains that this inner gift is really consciousness revealing what has already been selected in imagination. Creation is finished. Neville wasn't meant to be a poetic phrase. It's a literal description of how reality works. Every version of you already exists in the unseen, and the desire is simply pointing you toward the one that matches your true nature. When the desire appears, it's like a soft announcement. Here is who you can be, because you already are. Many people grow up hearing that desires are suspicious, dangerous, or selfish, but the mentor gently challenges this belief. If the desire were truly wrong for you, it wouldn't arise from the core of your being. It wouldn't persist in your imagination. It wouldn't feel like home. Instead, desire shows you an identity already formed within, waiting for you to recognize it. This is the essence of the law of assumption, not forcing reality to change, but assuming the state that God has already shown you. He often uses the analogy of a seed. The moment you notice the seed in your hand, the existence of the tree is already guaranteed. You don't doubt it. You don't panic because the tree isn't visible yet. And you certainly don't think the tree doesn't exist. In the same way, desire is the seed containing the final version of you. Feeling it real, Neville Goddard is simply nourishing that seed with attention instead of fear. He smiles as he recalls moments when people told him, "I don't know if my desire is possible." And he always answers the same way, "If it wasn't possible, you wouldn't have felt it." In Neville's teachings, imagination creates reality, not effort, not logic, not external validation. So when the desire appears, it's not a suggestion, it's a preview. A preview God chose to show you because the state is already alive in consciousness. He points out that living in the end isn't pretending or escaping reality. It's responding to the inner truth instead of the outer illusion. When a desire arises, it's not something you must earn. It's something you must recognize. And the recognition comes from understanding that creation is finished. The fulfilled version of yourself is not in the future, it's in a state, and states are timeless. Sometimes he shares a story about a woman who longed for a peaceful, abundant life. For years, she thought her desire was a sign that something was missing. But when she discovered Neville's work, she realized the desire was actually evidence of a version of herself already living in harmony, comfort, and joy. Once she assumed the end Neville style, quietly, calmly, her external world began to shift in ways she never could have predicted. He explains that this shift happens because the desire aligns you with the identity that matches it. The desire isn't random, it's tailored to the person you're becoming. It reveals a new state calling you forward. The law of assumption manifestation works because you're not chasing anything. You're stepping into who God already designed you to be. And once you step in, the world must rearrange itself to reflect your new state. He emphasizes that the most powerful change happens when the person stops questioning the validity of their desire and starts honoring it. When they stop treating it as fantasy and start treating it as revelation. Feeling is the secret because the feeling confirms the truth of the inner gift. And once a person feels the truth of it, resistance dissolves. They no longer fight their desire. They recognize its divine origin. And so the mentor invites the listener to sit quietly with their desires and ask themselves one simple question. What if this is God showing me the life that's already mine? With that question, the door quietly opens toward the next realization and the next topic. He starts by saying that one of the most common misunderstandings in manifestation is the urge to chase what is desired. People think running after it will make it arrive faster, but chasing is actually a confession of separation. When someone chases, they're declaring, "I don't have this yet." And under the law of assumption, whatever you declare internally becomes the state you occupy. The mentor gently points out that chasing delays the very thing the person wants to receive. He explains that pursuit comes from fear, not certainty. It comes from the belief that the desire exists out there, far away, unreachable, or dependent on external forces. But Neville Goddard teaches that imagination creates reality, not effort or strain. So when someone goes into chasing mode, they're abandoning the wish-fulfilled method entirely. They're stepping out of the identity of the one who already has and into the identity of the one who still longs. The mentor compares it to trying to catch your own shadow. The more you run, the more it runs. Desire works the same way when you perceive it as distant. Chasing reinforces the illusion that the desire is ahead of you instead of within you. And because feeling is the secret, the feeling of "I must chase" creates more of the same. More distance, more effort, more waiting. And none of this aligns with "assume the end" Neville teaches. He tells a relatable story about someone who wanted financial abundance so badly that they spent years chasing jobs, opportunities, and strategies. Yet nothing changed, because inside they were still someone trying to get there. Only when they shifted into the state of someone who already embodied abundance did the world begin to meet them differently. That's the quiet brilliance of the law of assumption manifestation. The state makes the path, not the path making the state. He emphasizes that the world becomes exhausting when you approach it like a hunt. Chasing drains energy, confidence, and creativity. Worse, it reinforces the belief that something is missing. But when the person understands that desire is already yours, Neville Goddard, they stop chasing and start allowing. Allowing doesn't mean passivity. It means acting from certainty instead of desperation. The mentor clarifies that there's a huge difference between moving from desire and moving toward desire. Moving toward implies distance. Moving from implies identity. When you live in the end, every step you take is from the state of fulfillment. You're not trying to become something. You're expressing what you already are. This is why creation is finished. Neville is such a powerful principle. The destination exists before you take a single step. He uses the analogy of trying to impress someone you already know loves you. When you know the love is there, your actions flow naturally, calmly. But when you doubt it, you overcompensate, second-guess, and push too hard. Desire is the same. When you trust it's already yours, your actions gain ease. When you doubt, you chase. And chasing, he reminds, is the slowest route to manifestation. He mentions that chasing often comes with questions like, "When will it come?" or "What should I do next?" These questions reveal the state of not having. They reveal uncertainty, but the one who feels it real. Neville Goddard doesn't ask these questions because they're already living from the fulfillment. They don't chase, they embody. And embodiment moves mountains without forcing anything. The mentor points out that chasing is just a habit learned from a world obsessed with effort and struggle. But consciousness doesn't operate that way. Consciousness responds to who you are, not what you want. So when you become the person who already has, the desire naturally externalizes. That's the law. That's the power of identity. That's the essence of "assume the end" Neville. And so he closes this topic with a soft reminder. Stop chasing what was never outside of you to begin with. If you want the shift, stop running and start recognizing. After all, the next topic will show that desire isn't something to pursue. It's something that reveals who you already are. He begins by saying that desire isn't a command telling you what to chase. It's a mirror quietly showing you who you already are on the inside. Most people look at desire as a future possibility, but Neville Goddard taught that desire reflects a state the deeper self has already stepped into. It's not maybe one day, it's this is already you. The mentor emphasizes that this shift in perspective changes everything about manifestation. He explains that when a person feels a genuine desire, something within them has already accepted its fulfillment as possible. They don't desire what is foreign to their nature. They desire what feels intimately connected to their true identity. That's why the desire is already yours. Neville Goddard resonates so deeply. It points to an inner truth rather than an external dream. The desire reveals the self, not the distance. He often compares desire to a reflection in water. You don't chase the reflection. You understand it's coming from you. In the same way, desire is a reflection of the state you've entered in imagination. And because imagination creates reality, the desire becomes evidence of who you've already become internally. Seeing desire as a mirror aligns perfectly with the law of assumption manifestation, because you begin assuming the identity instead of chasing the outcome. He shares an example of someone who constantly dreamed of stability and abundance. They thought it meant they were lacking, but the mentor explains that the desire was actually reflecting an inner version of them already living that life. Their deeper self had accepted abundance as natural, and the desire was the signal. When they began feeling it real Neville Goddard style, their outer world began shifting in surprising ways, opportunities appearing, ease returning, tension dissolving. The mentor points out that people often judge their desires because they don't match their current circumstances. But circumstances are simply the leftover results of previous states. Desire, on the other hand, reveals the state you're entering now. When Neville says creation is finished, he means that every identity already exists in consciousness. Desire shows you which one is calling you next. He uses the analogy of a child seeing a toy and instantly knowing it's theirs, even before holding it. The child isn't analyzing, calculating, or chasing. They feel ownership because it matches their inner sense of self. Adults lose this natural certainty because they overthink. But the principle remains the same. If you feel a desire deeply, it matches something already alive in your inner world. That's the essence of Assume the End, Neville. He explains that the mirror of desire never lies. It's accurate, precise, and deeply intuitive. If someone desires love, it's because their inner being already resonates with the frequency of being loved. If they desire success, it's because their deeper self has accepted success as possible. Nothing in consciousness appears without meaning. The law of assumption is always at work, revealing the identity before the manifestation. He shares a personal story about a time he felt an unusual pull toward a creative project. At first, it didn't make sense. He felt unprepared and unsure, but the desire was persistent. Only later did he realize that the desire was showing him a version of himself he hadn't met yet, but already existed within. The project unfolded naturally once he stopped resisting the reflection and started embodying it. That's when he truly understood that feeling is the secret. He explains that when people resist their desires, they're not resisting the dream, they're resisting their true self, and this resistance is what delays change. But when they accept desire as a mirror, everything begins to soften. They stop asking, "Can I have this?" and start realizing, "This is who I am." This shift in identity is the doorway through which manifestation enters. And so the mentor invites the listener to look at their desires differently, not as goals to chase, but as reflections of a self already waiting within. And once they see it this way, the path toward embodiment becomes obvious, leading seamlessly into the next topic. He begins by saying that the most powerful practices are often the simplest. Neville Goddard didn't ask people to visualize entire movies. He taught them to create one small scene that implies the wish fulfilled. Just one moment, a thank you hug, a relieved exhale, a celebratory smile. This tiny scene becomes a doorway into the state where the desire is already yours. Neville Goddard. It doesn't need complexity, it needs clarity. He explains that people often make the mistake of overthinking visualization, imagining endless steps or detailed scripts. But Neville taught that creation is finished, and because of that, you don't need to figure out how anything happens. You just need one scene that shows the result. When the mind enters that scene and feels it real Neville Goddard style, the law of assumption manifestation begins its work immediately. One scene is enough. The mentor suggests imagining something as simple as a friend congratulating you. Hear them say, "I'm so happy for you." Feel the warmth in your chest. Notice the calm certainty in your body. This tiny moment reflects the fulfillment without forcing the mind into effort. When you assume the end Neville style, the scene becomes a living experience rather than a mental exercise. That's the secret behind the wish-fulfilled method. He shares an example of a man who wanted financial freedom, but kept complicating his visualizations. The mentor encouraged him to imagine just one simple scene, checking his account and feeling relief. Nothing more. No details, no storyline. That one moment of relief became the anchor for his new state. And because imagination creates reality, his external world slowly began to mirror that relief. New opportunities, unexpected income, steady growth. He explains that what matters most isn't what you see, but what you feel. Feeling is the secret, because the emotional imprint signals the subconscious that the state is already yours. This simple scene helps the person tap into the essence of fulfillment: gratitude, calm, lightness, completion. When they enter the scene fully, the body responds as if it's real, and according to the law of assumption, what feels real becomes real. The mentor often recommends choosing a scene that would naturally happen after the desire is fulfilled. For love, maybe it's hearing someone whisper, "I'm glad you're here." For success, maybe it's receiving a warm message from a friend. For healing, perhaps it's waking up one morning and stretching effortlessly. Small, natural, implicit. Because when creation is finished, Neville, the end is already created. You simply step into it through imagination. He uses the analogy of remembering a cherished memory. You don't recreate the whole day. You recall a single moment that carries the entire emotional tone. The same works with manifestation. One vivid second of fulfillment contains the frequency of the entire outcome. That second becomes the seed, and when watered with repetition and acceptance, the external world aligns effortlessly. That's the law of assumption manifestation in action. He explains that some people worry they're not visual enough, but visualization isn't about perfect imagery. It's about immersing yourself in a felt experience. Some people sense the scene, others hear it, others simply know it. All of these work. The desire is already yours. Neville Goddard doesn't depend on artistic imagination. It depends on entering the state where the fulfillment already feels natural. He shares a personal anecdote about a time he wanted a significant shift in his life. Instead of visualizing a long sequence, he imagined a single moment, a deep breath of relief. That breath became his anchor. Every night he replayed it, sinking into the calm of the outcome. Weeks later, circumstances rearranged so effortlessly that he couldn't deny the power of one simple scene. That was when he truly understood why assume the end Neville is so transformative. And so, he invites the listener to choose their scene, just one, and step into it with softness, curiosity, and certainty, because once they experience that inner fulfillment, the next part of the journey becomes obvious and naturally leads into the next topic. He begins by reminding the listener that thoughts can wander, images can fade, but feeling is the anchor that never fails. Neville Goddard said countless times that feeling is the secret, because feeling is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. When a person touches the feeling of gratitude or relief, they're stepping directly into the state where the desire is already yours, Neville Goddard. Not hoping, not imagining, but occupying it. Feeling is what seals the state in consciousness. He explains that gratitude is one of the strongest signals a person can send. Not gratitude for something coming someday, but gratitude as if the desire is already fulfilled. That shift creates a deep inner certainty, a calm, grounded knowing. When someone moves into this emotional territory, the law of assumption manifestation becomes active without struggle. Gratitude confirms that the inner self has accepted the new reality. The mentor often says that you know you've crossed the bridge when the desire stops feeling like longing and starts feeling like memory. There's a calm joy that appears, a soft inner smile, a sense of course this is mine. This emotional atmosphere is the state of the wish-fulfilled method in its purest form. You're no longer trying to get something, you're remembering something the deeper self already claimed. He shares the example of a woman who practiced imagining a simple scene every night, but what truly changed her life wasn't the visualization itself, it was the feeling that came after, the warm certainty that the state was real. That certainty carried her through her day. It softened her reactions, changed her posture, shaped her decisions, and because imagination creates reality, her outer world mirrored that emotional shift with unmistakable precision. He explains that joy doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet ease in the chest or a lightness in the breath. This calm joy is the emotional signature of living in the end. It signals that the person has stepped into alignment with the version of themselves who already lives the fulfillment. When creation is finished, Neville, the emotional confirmation is your proof that you've reached the state internally, long before it shows externally. The mentor often compares feeling to tuning a radio. If you want to hear a certain station, you tune into its frequency, not hope it magically plays. Feeling is the tuning. When you enter the emotional frequency of fulfillment, the world must respond because the law of assumption doesn't listen to words, it listens to states. And states are nothing more than stable patterns of feeling. He mentions how many people judge their progress by external signs, but true progress is always internal first. If someone feels calm, relieved, grateful, or naturally confident about their desire, that's the sign the bridge has been crossed. They're now living from the state, not toward it. And once you assume the Neville style, the external must eventually match the internal. It's not optional, it's law. He shares a personal moment when he realized he had shifted states without noticing at first. He wasn't trying to manifest anything. He just felt a sudden calm certainty about a desire that previously caused stress. That certainty was the pivot point. Within days, small changes began surfacing. That experience taught him that feeling is the most reliable indicator of alignment. When the feeling shifts, the world follows. He explains that emotional bridges are built through repetition, not force. Every time you return to gratitude, joy, or calm knowing, you strengthen the state. And the stronger the state, the faster the manifestation. The desire is already yours, Neville Goddard. But your emotional alignment determines how quickly you see it reflected. Feeling is the secret, because feeling is the acceptance of the state. And so, he encourages the listener to prioritize feeling more than anything else. When the feeling stabilizes, the outer transformation becomes inevitable, leading naturally into the next topic. He begins by explaining that this is the moment where most people stumble, when the outer world still looks the same. They assume nothing is happening, nothing is changing, nothing is moving. But Neville Goddard always insisted that appearances are nothing more than delayed reflections of past states. They have no power unless you grant it to them. The wise mentor reminds the listener that when appearances contradict the desire, that's when persistence becomes your greatest ally. He explains that doubt is a reflex learned from childhood, a survival habit shaped by a world obsessed with evidence and logic. But the law of assumption manifestation doesn't operate on logic. It operates on inner identity. The moment you start doubting because nothing changed yet, you abandon the state and slip back into the old one. That's why feeling it real, Neville Goddard emphasized persistence. The state must be sustained long enough for the outer world to reorganize around it. He uses the analogy of ordering a package online. Once you place the order, you don't panic every hour wondering if it's coming. You don't call the store asking, "Are you sure?" You trust the process because you know the order was confirmed. Assume the end. Neville teaches the same principle. The moment you enter the state, the order is placed. The delivery time is irrelevant. The fulfillment is guaranteed. He shares a story of someone who felt deeply aligned with their desire, but panicked the moment something unexpected happened. They took the appearance as a sign of failure, but the mentor explains that the appearance was simply the old state dissolving, not a threat but a clearing. When creation is finished, Neville, the world must shift, but sometimes that shift looks chaotic before it looks aligned. He emphasizes that persistence doesn't mean forcing, praying desperately, or affirming obsessively. Persistence means holding the inner knowing steady. The desire and its fulfillment are one. They're the same state, the same identity. When you know this, appearances lose their power. You stop negotiating with them, stop arguing with them, stop believing they have authority. You live from the internal truth instead of the external noise. The mentor often tells people that the most dangerous moment in manifestation is not failure. It's almost success. Right before the shift appears, the old reality can intensify, trying to pull you back through habit and memory. But this is the moment to remain calm, to breathe, to remember that imagination creates reality, not circumstances. The one who persists becomes the one who receives. He explains that doubt and fear often surface, not because the desire is impossible, but because you're stepping out of an old identity. The ego panics when it senses change, but recognizing the panic as a sign of transition, not defeat, helps the person remain anchored in the state. When the desire is already yours, Neville Goddard, doubt becomes irrelevant. It may appear, but it no longer guides you. He mentions that when you persist, something subtle happens. The outer world starts bending. People respond differently. Opportunities appear where none existed. Blocks dissolve effortlessly. This soft reorganization confirms the truth that the law of assumption manifestation always works when the state is maintained. The world is flexible, but your inner state must remain firm. He reminds the listener that persistence is simply returning to the feeling, again and again and again, until it becomes your natural state. Feeling is the secret because it holds the state in place. And when you refuse to interpret appearances as failure, You give the new state room to take shape. That's when manifestation accelerates. And so, the mentor encourages the listener to keep choosing the inner truth over the external illusion. When the desire and its fulfillment are one, persistence becomes effortless, naturally preparing the ground for the next topic. He begins by explaining that before the physical world changes, the internal world always shifts first. That's why the earliest signs of manifestation aren't external, they're emotional. Someone who has stepped into the state where the desire is already yours, Neville Goddard, starts to feel lighter, calmer, and strangely at peace. Even without physical proof, something inside loosens. This emotional relief is one of the clearest signs that the law of assumption manifestation has begun its work. He explains that this lightness isn't forced. It's not positive thinking or blind optimism. It's a natural byproduct of assuming the end Neville style. When a person truly feels it real, Neville Goddard, their nervous system responds as if the desire is complete. They breathe easier, their mind quiets, their reactions soften. The mentor says this is the internal sunrise, the first indicator that the new state has taken root. He continues by saying that once the emotional shift happens, synchronicities start to appear, small but meaningful coincidences that confirm alignment. A book recommendation arrives at the perfect moment. A conversation with a stranger reveals exactly what you needed to hear. An old opportunity reappears unexpectedly. These synchronicities act like gentle winks from the universe, reminding you that creation is finished, Neville, and the path is unfolding. The mentor shares the story of someone who wanted a new career direction, but saw no options. After entering the state of fulfillment consistently, she began noticing signs everywhere. Articles, conversations, new ideas. Nothing was fully there yet, but the world seemed to move around her, aligning piece by piece. That's how imagination creates reality. Not always with dramatic leaps, but through subtle cues that guide you toward the outcome. He explains that opportunities are another sign. When the state shifts, the person naturally attracts or recognizes opportunities they previously overlooked. They may receive an invitation, a message, or an offer that aligns perfectly with their chosen identity. These opportunities aren't always the final manifestation, but they're stepping stones proving the shift is real. The desire is already yours, Neville Goddard, and the world begins adjusting to reflect it. He uses the analogy of adjusting a radio dial. At first, the sound is faint or distorted, but as you get closer to the correct frequency, the music becomes clearer. Emotional lightness, synchronicities, and aligned opportunities are the clearer signal. They show that you're tuning into the identity your deeper self already occupies. Feeling is the secret because it shapes the frequency you match. He emphasizes that one of the biggest signs is a change in how you interpret the world. Things that once frustrated you now feel insignificant. Challenges that used to scare you no longer shake you. This emotional resilience isn't a coincidence. It's the result of living in the end. When you've accepted the state, your reactions change first, and the outer world follows. The mentor points out that sometimes the signs are subtle, a sudden wave of peace, a moment of intuitive clarity, déjà vu, or the curious feeling that the manifestation is near. These sensations aren't imagination, they're confirmation. They show that the subconscious has accepted the new reality, and according to the law of assumption manifestation, once the subconscious accepts it, the outer world must eventually conform. He shares a personal story about a time he was manifesting a major life shift. Before anything changed physically, he noticed small synchronicities, hearing the same phrase repeatedly, receiving unexpected support, feeling sudden certainty. These moments were like breadcrumbs leading toward the manifestation. They reminded him that he didn't need to force anything. He just needed to persist in the feeling. And so, the mentor says that these early signs are not coincidences. They're the evidence that the shift has begun. The inner world moves first, always. And when you recognize these signs, you naturally step into deeper embodiment, which leads smoothly into the next topic. He begins by explaining that true manifestation only becomes effortless when the person stops obsessing over the how. The moment someone wonders how will it come, they've stepped out of the state of fulfillment and back into the state of lack. But when they truly embody the identity of the one who already has their desire, the question disappears naturally. The desire is already yours, Neville Goddard. So why ask how something arrives when it's already in your possession internally? He explains that living from the end doesn't mean pretending. It means stepping into the inner version of yourself, who already owns the experience you want. This is why Assume the End, Neville, is the most powerful technique he taught. You don't think about how love will come. You move like someone who is loved. You don't ask how money will come. You behave with the calm certainty of someone who is financially secure. This identity becomes your new baseline. The mentor often compares this to wearing a pair of shoes that fit perfectly. When the shoes fit, you stop thinking about your feet, you just walk. When you embody the fulfilled identity, you stop thinking about the desire. You just live. This is deep embodiment, the state where the wish-fulfilled method becomes second nature, and the law of assumption manifestation works without effort or questioning. He shares a simple example. When someone orders food at a restaurant, they don't anxiously wonder, how will the chef cook it? Or which route will the waiter take? They assume the meal is on its way because they've placed the order. The same applies to manifestation. When creation is finished, Neville, the details are irrelevant. Once the state is selected, the world handles the logistics. He explains that deep embodiment creates an energetic shift that others can feel. People respond differently to you. You make decisions from clarity instead of fear. You speak differently, stand differently, interpret differently. When you feel it real Neville Goddard style, the identity becomes automatic, and the outer world must adjust, because imagination creates reality, not the other way around. He adds that deep embodiment isn't about constant visualization. It's about alignment. When someone truly embodies the end state, they don't wake up worrying. They don't question the timing. They don't monitor circumstances. They move through life like someone who already has what they desire. This effortless confidence is what makes manifestation accelerate, because the subconscious finally receives a steady message. The mentor shares a personal story of a time he struggled financially. He spent months trying affirmations, visualizations, techniques, but always with the underlying fear of how. Only when he assumed the identity of someone stable and secure did things shift. Opportunities found him. Solutions emerged. But none of it began until he stopped managing the how and started embodying the who. That's when the law of assumption manifestation revealed its true power. He explains that the identity shift is the real manifestation. The physical outcome is just the shadow of that shift. When someone stops needing signs, reassurance, or constant reminders, that's when they know they've fully stepped into the state. Feeling is the secret, because feeling confirms identity, and identity shapes reality. He encourages the listener to notice how their questions change when they embody the end. Instead of, when will it happen? They start thinking, what would I naturally do next as the person who already has this? This subtle pivot reveals that the embodiment has begun. It's the point where the desire is no longer a wish, it becomes a lived truth. And so, the mentor invites them to step fully into the identity and trust it. Because once the identity becomes natural, the final realization becomes undeniable, leading gracefully into the next topic. He begins by saying that the greatest misunderstanding in manifestation is treating desire as something that will be yours one day. Neville Goddard dismantled that belief entirely. If you desire it, it's already yours, Neville Goddard, not in a distant future, but now, in the only place creation actually happens, imagination. The mentor emphasizes that the moment the desire arises, the state is formed, and the deeper self has already claimed it. He explains that the mind loves to project fulfillment into the future because it feels safer there, but the law of assumption manifestation only operates in the present. You cannot live in the end tomorrow, you can only live in it now. When creation is finished, Neville, there is no waiting period. The state exists. Your job is only to accept it, feel it real Neville Goddard style, and rest in the knowing that the desire and its fulfillment are one. He adds that accepting the state doesn't require dramatic effort. It's a soft inner shift, like relaxing into a warm chair or slipping into a familiar room. The desire is already yours because the version of you who lives it already exists in consciousness. By assuming the end, Neville teaches, you merge with that version effortlessly. And once the merge happens, the external world begins its natural rearrangement. He shares an analogy of a movie you've already watched. Even if you're at the beginning again, you don't feel anxious about how it ends. You know the ending. You relax into the experience. Manifestation is the same. When you truly accept the state, the emotional tension dissolves. You stop chasing, doubting, or forcing because the end is known internally. Imagination creates reality, and you've already seen the ending within. He explains that the world is slow compared to consciousness, but it's obedient. It must obey the inner state, because that is the source of all appearance. When someone embodies the wish-fulfilled method, they're no longer surprised when the physical catches up. They're grateful, they're calm. They recognize the unfolding as natural. The desire was theirs long before the evidence appeared. The mentor shares a personal moment where he realized this truth deeply. He had been longing for a breakthrough, treating it like a faraway dream. But the moment he accepted the state, truly accepted it, everything changed. Not instantly, but inevitably. Conversations shifted, opportunities emerged, and the breakthrough felt like a confirmation, not a miracle. That's when he understood the power behind "The desire is already yours," Neville Goddard. He explains that this final realization brings freedom. Instead of living in anticipation, the person lives in embodiment. Instead of waiting for signs, they live as the sign. Instead of fearing delays, they trust the process. Feeling is the secret, because feeling determines the timeline. The more deeply you accept the state emotionally, the faster reality aligns externally. He emphasizes that the universe doesn't need time to decide what you deserve. Consciousness has already chosen the moment the desire appeared. The only question is whether you will choose it. Accepting the state is accepting yourself, your expanded self, your fulfilled self, your true self. And when you accept that identity, the world cannot contradict it for long. He ends by reminding the listener that nothing is withheld, nothing is denied, nothing is impossible. If the desire exists within you, it's because the fulfillment already exists for you. Your only work is to accept, assume, and allow. The rest is the world catching up to the truth that's been alive in imagination from the beginning. And so, he gently invites the listener to step fully into this reality now, because everything needed has already been given, revealing the next step without effort or strain. Now that you've seen the deeper meaning behind your desires, the real question becomes, what will you do with this understanding? Will you keep treating your desire like a distant dream, or will you finally allow yourself to live from the identity of the one who already has it? If the desire truly is the first sign of fulfillment, as Neville Goddard taught, then every longing you've ever felt was never a chase. It was a calling. So take a moment and ask yourself, what would shift in your life if you trusted that the desire is already yours? How would you walk? How would you speak? What decisions would you make starting today? Because the world doesn't shape who you are, your inner state does. And the moment you choose the state, the outer world has no choice but to follow. If this message opened something inside you, if it sparked clarity, or if it made you rethink everything you've been taught about manifestation, then don't let this be the end. Stay close. There is so much more to uncover, and each insight brings you closer to becoming the version of yourself you've always sensed deep down. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Your transformation has already begun. Now let's continue it together.